In a strange kind of way, the overdose deaths that have suddenly spiked might be the only way to get people's attention. What's particularly happened over the last few years, which is why we've seen this extraordinary increase in death, is the arrival of fentanyl. The transformation of opium, which has been around for thousands of years, into morphine and heroin were done by legitimate drug companies trying to get this formula right. And the logical consequence of that in today's pharmaceutical sophisticated world is fentanyl, which is an incredibly concentrated opioid, probably 50 times as powerful as heroin. Something like 9 grams of salt will give you the highest high you've ever experienced. 12 grains of salt, the equivalent of salt, and you'll die. So it's an incredibly small amount of drug with enormous impact. But once it started to come through into the drug system and actually be added to heroin, 2 things happened. One, the street dealers couldn't act like the big hospitals and pharmaceutical companies and get the dosage right. I mean, imagine it has to be cut with all sorts of other materials. And you just don't have the skills to keep it within the dosage that will allow people to be high without killing them. One of the iron laws of prohibition is that the harder the enforcement, the harder the drugs. And over time, each of these substances therefore become much more intense. So you have super potent cannabis in today's world that really didn't exist in the 1970s or 80s. You had crystal meth come out of amphetamines, just a very concentrated form of the drug. In prohibition of alcohol, the most commonly trafficked goods were actually hard liquor, not beer and wine. 3 years ago, 2% of the heroin that was seized by police in New Jersey contained fentanyl. Today, around 1/3 of it does. That's why these deaths are happening. How do you stop fentanyl? Again, because it's so tiny, because it's designed in some ways to avoid law enforcement. It's basically impossible. We know as for a fact that the things that used to give us pleasure, that gave us our natural oxytocin, which opioids simply mimic, are a healthy family life, a community you live in that understands you and knows you, a job that provides some sort of real meaning to you and even some status for you, religion, which provided a framework for you to go through periods of suffering and survive, a belief in your country even. These are sources of meaning. And there is a void, particularly in America, of those things that used to make life worth living. So in my mind, the only way forward, given our level of sophistication with the concentration of these drugs, is to legalize them and to regulate them. I really don't see any other way forward.